Welcome to the Screen Podcast. Thanks for joining us. This is day 5 of our Cannes 2026 daily podcasts. Thanks to everybody who is tuning in and giving us some wonderful feedback. My name is Wendy Mitchell. I'm a contributing editor at Screen International and ScreenDaily.com, and I'm joined today by 2 esteemed colleagues. The first is Michael Rosser, our Asia editor. Hello, Mike.
Hello, long-time listener. Pleasure to be here.
Yes, and our reporter and video and podcast producer, Ellie Calnan. Hi, Ellie.
Hello. Thanks for letting me on this side of the podcast.
Exactly. Ellie's been working tirelessly on editing and producing these pods, and good to see her in front of the camera now. Mike, it must be a busy year for you because it seems like Asia is booming at Cannes 2026. Japan is the Marche's country of focus. Park Chan-wook heading the competition jury, and of course some big Asian titles in the selection. Am I right in saying this is quite a big Asian presence at Cannes this year?
There's a massive Asian presence at Cannes this year. Being honest, it's a mixed picture for Asian film this year. On the positive side, you've got so many events at the market and at the festival. You know, there's Japan night, there's Japanese night, there's an IP pitching session. You can't move for Japan this year. There's 5 Japanese films in selection, including Korieda's Sheep in the Box, Hamaguchi's All of a Sudden, in competition. So very strong. South Korea is back this year. They were very down and disappointed last year to not have a single film in the festival for quite some years. But this year they've got not only films back in the festival, but exciting films. Na Hongjin's Hope, July Jung's Dora, Yong Sang-ho's Colony. So it's very, very buoyant on that front. In the market, CJENM, a massive South Korean studio that backed the Palme d'Or winner some years ago, Parasite, is back, having not been at the festival, the market last year. So there is certainly a lot of positives. And South Korea, which is experiencing some struggles with its cinema back home, is actually showing some signs of recovery. So there definitely are positives to take there. On the other side, there's a lack of buyers from China, for example, this year. There are some regular buyers that we'd usually see from other parts of Asia that just simply haven't come. Reasons I'm being told is just simply the cost, flights, of accommodation, and the cost of flights, of course, up at the moment. So that's affecting things. And footfall as well around, so some are finding it quite busy, others are not. So it's a bit of a mixed picture. There's even been some empty booths that I've noticed. So, a mixed picture at the moment.
Wow. Empty booths. I'm going to go there and take a nap one day when I'm having trouble in the Palais. Mike, did you want to mention any notable market titles? Because there have been some nice announcements that have been made. And are, you said it's a mixed bag, but have we seen people actually buying and selling Asian titles yet?
Well, this is something else that's been that I'm hearing again and again, is that people just don't really sign deals here in the same way that they used to. Very often we come into the market and lots of pre-sales have already been done, or there are conversations happening here or continuing here ahead of deals being signed afterwards. So that's the sort of the trend that I'm hearing here. But, nevertheless, there are some hot projects from Asia in the market. Yong Sang-ho, who's got Colony in selection, he has got an upcoming film of his called Paradise Lost, which it sounds quite interesting, about a mother who lost her son some years ago, so has recreated him using AI. It sounds quite similar in a way to Korieda's Sheep in the Box. However, the twist here is that the son turns back up 9 years later. And so she has to sort of reconcile between her AI son and her real son. That's a very interesting idea. From Thailand, there's a film called Inherit, starring Devika Horn, who's the star of last year's Critics' Week Top Prize winner, A Useful Ghost. And in that, she plays an 80-year-old long absent grandmother who suddenly reappears looking like a young woman wanting to pass the curse on to her granddaughter. So, there's very interesting, fun projects coming out of Asia, not least Bong Joon-ho as well, of course,
Yes.
former Palme d'Or winner with Parasite, with an animation ally, Ali,
It's Allie.
Ali.
Yes. I actually had the chance to quickly meet director Bong while he was in Cannes. I had never met him before. I've always been a fan, of course. And clearly he's one of the smartest and coolest filmmakers we have working today. But he was such a nice dude, I have to say. He had a great sense of humor. He was really wonderful to chat to him for a few minutes. And yeah, Ali, which is being sold by Pathé International, is his first feature-length animation. And what was really unique is when I spoke to him for a minute, he told me he doesn't really want people to go back and watch it, but he made a student film. His first ever film was a very short stop-motion animation, and you could actually see a clip of it in the documentary Yellow Door on Netflix that is about director Bong's old film club. So Neon signed on for Ali, this animation, and it's intended for families. And Neon signed on for it before Cannes, a week or two before Cannes it was announced. And Pathé was holding back the rest of the sales, and I expect we'll see a lot of sales done for that because director Bong was here doing a presentation for some special buyers for that film.
Exactly. So yeah, lots of cool projects.
Yeah, that was definitely a cool one. So, Ellie, let's come to you. You're kind of a roving reporter, only when we let you out of the podcast editing suite. What have been some of your Cannes highlights so far? Or maybe you've been to quite a few of the press conferences.
Yeah, so obviously it's still early days. We've only had 4 sort of competition titles so far, in terms of press conferences. But yeah, I mean, I think we're kind of seeing a similar trend that we saw at Berlin. I mean, that we've been seeing for the past few years, politics becoming quite a dominant topic of discussion at press conferences. I think what's interesting is I felt like at Berlin we were getting a lot of actors and filmmakers being asked about whether they should speak up about things going on in the world, like in Gaza. And now I feel like the conversation is slightly shifting to the talent that does speak up. We had Paul Laverty he's one of the jurors at the press conference talking about, calling out Hollywood for reportedly blacklisting actors like Susan Sarandon and Javier Bardem, who have both been vocal about Palestine. I was at Hannah Einbinder's, did a chat with Women in Motion talk a few days ago, and she's the star of Teenage Sex and Death at Camp Miasma. She's also very politically outspoken about Gaza as well, and she was asked about whether she feared about being blacklisted, and she sort of said, the toll of not speaking up is greater than, potentially missing out on career opportunities. And even yesterday, Ashghar Farhadi, who's here, Iranian filmmaker here with Parallel Tales, he was kind of asked this slightly convoluted question, as these questions often are at press conferences,
Yes.
about the relationship between, censorship in Iran and not being able to speak up, as like by law in Iran, and international stars speaking up and or choosing not to speak up. So we're kind of seeing the conversation slightly evolve from Berlin, and since between Berlin and Cannes, we've had actors come out and say that they feel like they've been blacklisted for speaking up. So it's kind of interesting to see how that conversation's shifting, and I think we'll see it coming up a lot more in press conferences. I mean, a lot of these films in competition are, political, either retrospectively, historically, or in our current times. So I don't think those kind of questions are going to go away anytime soon. I've also seen, obviously, the age-old question, or not age-old, it's still very new, but AI. AI
Oh,
has been coming
yes.
up, obviously. I won't rehash too much, but obviously Demi Moore, she spoke about it. And a brilliant actress she is. She's probably not the most, relevant person to be speaking about AI, but I did find it interesting. Peter Jackson, Lord of the Rings director, who's been here collecting a sort of honorary Palme d'Or. He gave a talk a few days ago, and he is someone who you would want to hear what he has to say about AI. I mean, the Lord of the Rings films revolutionized visual effects. He has his own visual effects company. This is something very relevant to his world. And he interestingly said, I don't quite see what the issue is with AI. To him, he said it felt like just another special effect. So it was quite surprising for someone who is so immersed in the world of visual effects to sort of see AI as just like another extension of that. And I would say he did say, he was obviously against AI being used without an actor's permission, AI sort of taking their likeness without their consent. But he sort of said, if an actor consents to that, I don't really see the big deal. So that was quite surprising. And I think, we've posted some clips online and people haven't been happy on the internet, but when are they ever? But yeah, I think, people are being asked about AI all the time. So it's interesting at least to see someone maybe take a slightly different perspective and actually have quite an informed opinion to sort of speak about these things. So they're kind of two big themes that I've sort of come out of press conferences and talks that I've been to. And I would just give a quick shout out to Sandra Hüller, who in the Fatherland press conference was asked about whether she would do a sequel to Project Hail Mary, to which she was not happy to be being asked about that. And she gave this very sort of short answer about, I don't know what the future holds. And then at the end gave this very sort of Miranda Priestley-esque, that's all, which
I like that.
Yeah.
Well done,
So
Sandra.
that was fun. Yeah.
Yes, I like that a lot. And Ellie, we talked to Orlando yesterday about the jury grid, which we all love. But he talked more about the history of it. And I'm wondering if you have any early, results. And obviously, we've got a few votes in there. I think Fatherland is doing quite well, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's very early to say, but I wouldn't be surprised if yesterday we perhaps maybe saw our top and bottom of the jury grid come into fruition. I mean, yes, you mentioned Fatherland, it got 3.3, which I should note is actually already ahead of last year's joint winners, which was just an accident and two prosecutors, which both got 3.1. So that's very promising. And we also had Parallel Tales, Ashka Farhadi's film, which got a 1.7, which definitely divided critics. I think one critic told me there were some walkouts in his press screening.
Oh, dear. He's entering
So I would
Sean
say
Penn territory.
I would say he's still got a margin above last year's I don't want to say loser. Last year's bottom scorer, which was
lowest scorer, yes.
Lowest scorer, which was Fury, the Italian film, which got 1.1. So he's still got a decent margin on that. But yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if by the end of it that's our top and bottom.
Yeah,
in one day. Yeah, a lot of that we've obviously. People will be able to see in print today and online scores for Hamaguchi's All of a Sudden and Marie Kreutz's Gentle Monster.
Two hot ones, yeah.
Yeah, there's been a lot of buzz. A lot of critics said that Hamaguchi was one that they were particularly excited to see. And I should note that his last film, Drive My Car, got a 3.5.
Okay.
So, yeah, that could be a strong one as well. So, still all to play for.
Yeah, I'm really curious. When the lineup came out and we did a podcast, I had very boldly said my pick for the Palme d'Or was Minotaur by Zavaneskiv. And I'm really curious to see how that film is going to perform on the jury grid when we finally get to see it. And I will say that's not from any intelligence whatsoever. I've talked to zero people who have seen that film. It just feels like there's a lot of expectation for that one. So we'll have to wait and see. Any only in Cannes moments that you've had so far this year, Mike?
Well, I've lost count of the number of tiny dogs in tiny pushchairs that I've seen. I walked by the aforementioned Peter Jackson having breakfast with Guillermo del Toro. I've seen, Coriader and Yong Sang-ho just walking around, taking in the atmosphere. I saw a few people huddled around an iPhone with a voice saying, I asked for 35 and they came back with 20. I think we should take it. That's it. But I think something
Is it Dragon's Den or is it Cannes? I love it. Yeah.
Indeed. I think the only thing that I've never seen in Cannes before was a robot dog being walked by a robot human. So I wouldn't be surprised if they're pitching a project here next week.
Okay, yeah. Well, I saw a robot, sort of AI robot thing dancing in front of McDonald's, and I just thought, there's Cannes in a nutshell. Ellie, have you seen anything weird?
Not seen anything weird, but a few nights ago I was at one of the many Irish pubs in Cannes, a great hot spot for journalists to hang out in. And sat next to us at the table was a group of like young people, younger than me, if you can believe it. But they're here to get into the yachting business. Because obviously all the yachts, but it's like, if you've seen below deck, they're getting into like hospitality, and they just every day they just walk around the harbour handing in their CVs to the yachts.
Okay.
So I thought that was fascinating. So that felt
That's
to me a bit
other side
only in
of
Cannes.
That is only in Cannes. Every time I walk past some of those Arte yachts and see people lugging on, crates of water, I think, oh my gosh, there should be a season of Below Deck here in Cannes. So maybe after White Lotus, we could get a Below Deck Cannes special. Thanks to Mike. Thanks to Ellie for joining us today. Thanks to you for listening. And Mike wanted me to also remind you that we were talking about Asian projects in the market. And if you go to Screen Daily or look at the print dailies, you can find big sections on hot projects from Taiwan, Southeast Asia, Hong Kong and China, South Korea and Japan. Wow. A lot to have a look at, especially if you're a buyer. So, thanks to everybody who listened today. We really appreciate it. We'll be back again tomorrow morning. And thanks to everybody at Team Screen who makes this possible. See you tomorrow.